Krishna, everyone. On behalf of iskcon Vaman Kshetra, we would like to welcome everyone for Friday evening discourse. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Devakinandan Das Prabhuji joining us from Singapore. Today, Prabhuji is speaking on fulfillment and preservation, Lord Krishna's response to Sudama's exclusive devotion. So I would like to welcome Prabhuji and request him to start today's discourse. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, and we welcome all devotees today for the program. Thank you, as always, to iskcon Vaman Kshetra for inspiring us so much and to be in your good association. Today's topic is so nice. It's about the pastime between Krishna and his dear friend Sudama. And this happens in Krishna book, and it's such a sweet pastime. And not only is it sweet and relishable to hear, but just as important is the fact that it has so much that we can learn in terms of devotional service. The mood of Sudama is something that we can all benefit from. And Srila Prabhupada's rendition of this wonderful pastime in the pages of Krishna book is par excellence, and it's really without comparison. Without comparison. So let us understand this wonderful pastime in the context of a verse from Bhagavad Gita, because this is an important verse that sets the pastime of Sudama and the Supreme Lord in nice context. So the verse is 9th chapter, text 22 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. 9:22. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate tesham nityabhyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please hear the translation. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. Let us hear Srila Prabhupada's transcendental purport. One who is unable to live for a moment without Krishna consciousness cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day, being engaged in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshipping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, rendering other services, cultivating friendship, and surrendering fully to the Lord. Such activities are all auspicious and full of spiritual potencies, which make the devotee perfect in self-realization, so that his only desire is to achieve the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a devotee undoubtedly approaches the Lord without difficulty. This is called yoga. By the mercy of the Lord, such a devotee never comes back to this material condition of life. Shema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. The Lord helps the devotee to achieve Krishna consciousness by yoga. And when he becomes fully Krishna conscious, the Lord protects him from falling down to a miserable conditioned life. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So Sudama's wonderful pastime appears in Krishna book. 9:22 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita is one of the most famous and important verses from the Gita. Because Krishna says very nicely here that he guarantees the protection and preservation of the devotee. Whatever the devotee has, Krishna promises here that he preserves that devotee's consciousness and the devotee's position. In other words, a devotee in devotional service, when a devotee takes up devotional service, the devotee should have faith that his condition will never be precarious. He should have faith that whatever dangers that he faces, Krishna will always protect him. And when we say Krishna protects the devotee, not only does he protect the devotee in the sense that he did Prahlad Maharaj, for example, protecting his body, but as he also did with Prahlad Maharaj, Krishna always protected his consciousness, such that throughout all the dangers that Prahlad Maharaj was facing, never once did he lose his remembrance of Krishna. Never once did he lose his faith in Krishna. So that is the first promise that Krishna gives. Sometimes when we take up devotional service, we are afraid that our status quo will be disturbed. We are afraid that we have to sacrifice something. But over and over, our experience and Bhagavad Gita tells us that, frankly speaking, whatever that is needed to be preserved, Krishna will preserve. Our problem sometimes is we think we know what is good for us. But we should have faith that Krishna knows what is best for us. And when we follow Krishna and we follow the path of Krishna consciousness, then we must submit to how he preserves us. We must submit to how he protects us. The second thing that Krishna does in this verse is that not only does he preserve what you have, or what I have, or what anyone has, but Krishna also gives us what we lack. And the living entities in this material world, what do they really lack? They actually lack happiness. They lack peace. They lack satisfaction. They are always in anxiety and misery and challenges and difficulties. And it's a very difficult condition for the living entities because they struggle with their mind and their natures. But if we take up Krishna consciousness and we worship Krishna, and the word that's being used here is ananyaha. Ananyaha means having no other object. In other words, there is no other object of our love, our concentration, our remembrance, and no other object for whom we take shelter except from this wonderful Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. That is the point we must understand. So ananyaha means that the object of our love is Krishna. He is the object of our love. And then what do? Very important is we turn to Krishna with exclusive devotion. Exclusive devotion means not only is the object of devotion only one, but then the devotion that is given to Krishna is also exclusive. Meaning to say, it is not dissipated. It is not many-branched. It is not one day I have some devotion for you, another day I don't have devotion. So Ananya Bhakti means in any given situation, Krishna is whole and soul for us. In any challenges of life, we have no one else to turn to but Krishna. When Lord Brahma was humbled in the 10th canto, 14th chapter, because he stole the calves and the boys, and he hid them away in a cave, and he was challenging the potency and greatness of Krishna, you will realize that at one point, after 1 year, Krishna actually bewildered Brahma, because Brahma realized that Krishna had expanded himself to become the gopas and the calves. And after he became them, they were actually the mothers and fathers of the boys and the cows. They were actually more satisfied with the replacement, so to speak, than the actual boys and the calves. Because this proves that actually there is only one exclusive object of love in all our hearts. It is actually Krishna. But unfortunately, because of material conditioning, we transfer that object of love, to everyone and anyone. But we forget that the object of love that gives us true love and happiness is actually Krishna. That's why the parents were happy, because Krishna was really the object of love. And they extended that love that they gave to Krishna to their family. But the point I'm trying to say here is, when finally when finally Brahmaji stood before Krishna, he offered loving prayers in humility. And in one of his prayers, he says, "My dear Lord, kindly forgive me. When a child in the womb of the mother kicks, um, will the mother be very angry with the child? The mother accepts the kicks of the child because the mother loves the child. So sometimes the mother accepts the kick of the child with more love, actually, because she knows then the child is there." So this is a nice point, actually. The point is, exclusive devotion to Krishna should continue in all situations, whether in good situations or in bad situations. Our faith should never increase or decrease depending on our material happiness and material joys. In fact, our faith in Krishna should continuously increase. And that is the greatness of devotion to Krishna. Because if we are exclusively devoted to Krishna, whatever that is lacking in our hearts, whatever contamination that we have in our heart, whatever devotion that is lacking in our heart, what does he say? He will carry what we lack. In other words, he will carry what we lack, whatever we lack. If we lack devotion in our heart, but we are exclusively turning to Krishna, Krishna will fill up the spaces with bhakti. He himself will give us bhakti. And if we have something that we already have, never fear losing it. If it is meant for the advancement of our devotional service, Krishna will allow us to keep it. But if it's meant to be a barrier to our devotional service, then Krishna will remove it. That removal is also his mercy. So against the backdrop of this wonderful verse that tells us about how Krishna preserves what we lack and he carries to us what we lack. And that too, he carries it. It is not some agent that he sends. He personally carries. He carries whatever we lack to him, to us actually. This is the greatness of Krishna. And this he did in the pastime of Sudama. So in Krishna book, Prabhupada says that Sudama was a very nice, simple Brahmana friend of Krishna. He was very simple. And he was living very simply as a householder. He had very nice qualities. Bhagavatam tells us he was very elevated in his transcendental knowledge. He was very unattached to material needs and enjoyment. He was very peaceful and he was subdued in his senses and he was very controlled no matter how much challenges he had. He was a householder and he had children, he had a wife, but he was not so absorbed, and busy accumulating wealth for a very comfortable living. Instead, Bhagavatam tells us he was very satisfied by whatever income which automatically came to him in the cause of his destiny and his work. In other words, he was never over-endeavoring. Instead, he used his time for being absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And he was always remembering his dear friend Krishna and all the services that he could do for him. So in that way, time passed. One day, his wife came to see him. Wife was also a devotee. But the wife explained to him that at this moment, we are all in a very impoverished state. Perhaps you are controlling your senses and I'm trying to control my senses. But my dear husband, our children and our state now is very, very impoverished. I am asking you, do you remember that you have a friend Krishna? And you must remember that Krishna is now the master and the Lord of Dwarka. I am told that after the Mahabharat war and everything else that happened, Krishna doesn't leave. He doesn't move around. He just is always staying in Dwarka. So why don't you go and see Krishna? And I'm imploring you to see Krishna, not because only of material benefit, but it is a fact that we really don't have anything at the moment. And even though you are trying very hard, by its own endeavor, nothing is coming actually. So then she said, I know, my dear Lord and my dear husband, that you're not attached to this material opulence. But I also know that Krishna is so kind that he will award you some material benefit for at least the bare necessities of life. That's all I'm asking. Why? Because wife was also devotee. So Sudama was initially a bit reluctant. He heard his wife and he realized that they were really in impoverished state. Her clothes were in tatters, so was his clothes. The children were eating, but they were not eating so much. So he needed to do something. So induced by the repeated request of his wife, he also began to think, actually, what is the harm in me going to see Krishna? I will not go there to ask him Because I'm convinced that if I need something, Krishna will give it to me. So I'm not going to go there to ask him anything. But then, this is a wonderful chance to actually take darshan of Lord. So if I'm going to go there, it would be very nice for me to see Krishna. So he agreed and he told his wife, all right, I will go and see Krishna. But I cannot go empty-handed. He may be the Lord of Dwarka and I may have nothing. But it is my duty out of love to give him something. So he asked his wife, look around and see if we have something. But they had nothing in the house. They were so poor. They had no foodstuff even. They were that poor. So the wife went over to the neighbor's house. And in Krishna book, Prabhupada writes, she begged. She begged. She did not borrow, she begged. She begged actually for 4 palmful of chip rice. And so she got the chip rice. She brought it back. They had a handkerchief with some, holes. It was not very clean. It was neat. It was clean, but it was not very, well made because it was already tattered. And so she took the handkerchief, tied it up in a bundle, and gave it to him, and he put it on a stick. And Sudama started walking. As Sudama started walking, it was a long walk, Krishna was in Dwarka at that time, and it was a long walk. So Sudama was walking and walking. And as he walked and walked and walked, Bhagavatam and Krishna book tells us, he was not speculating. The important thing here is he was not speculating, what will Krishna give me now? Will he give me enough? Maybe he may give me more. If he gives me more, what will I do? No, he was just absorbed in the remembrance of Krishna. He was absorbed in the memories of Krishna. And in that way, even though it was long traveling for him, eventually he reached there. And the only point he had in mind is, Krishna lives in such opulence now. He lives in a heavily guarded place known as Dwarka. And all the great kings, like Jarasandha and all, were trying to attack all the time. Such a great and powerful fortress of Dwarka. How will I ever get in and even take darshan of the Lord? But then Sudama had faith in Krishna. Because Krishna always gives you what you lack. So if you lack the ability to have access to him, at least physically, Krishna also takes care of that. And true enough, when he came to the gates of Dwarka, he, along with some other Brahmanas, went through at least 3 military encampments. Big military positions, they were like fortresses. But he found that because he was a Brahmana, and by the Lord's mercy, he went through the big gates. After he went through the big gates, he saw 16,000 large palaces within Dwarka. One palace is already big. Can you imagine 16,000 palaces? It's unmeasurable. It's immeasurable for us actually. And all these palaces were very huge palaces. They were not small ones, And so he did not know where to go. But again, if we lack something, Krishna always takes care of it. So Krishna as Achyuta, as Paramatma in the heart, somehow or another, he entered into one palace. And actually it turned out to be Rukmini Mata's palace. It was actually Rukmini Mata's palace. So he got the right palace right in the first time. Because Krishna that day was actually in Rukmini Mata's palace at that time. And he was seated on the bedstead, Sometimes when you sit down and talk to someone, you sit on the edge of the bed. So Krishna was in talks with Rukmini Mata. And suddenly, Bhagavatam tells us from far, because he was very far away down the road, down the hall. But from very far, he saw Sudama. And Krishna instantly recognized Sudama, his friend whom he had not seen for years and years and years. And in Krishna book, Prabhupada says that he actually had intense ecstasy. He was ecstatic just to see Sudama. He was very happy to see Sudama. This is a very important point. The Lord is never displeased when he sees a devotee. In fact, even demons, the Lord is never displeased. The Lord is actually the father of all living entities. It's normally the demons who don't like to see Krishna. But Krishna is always ready to see everyone. Why not Sudama actually? So Bhagavatam tells us Krishna left his seat. He embraced his friend with open arms. Both his arms, he embraced him. And that embrace was so amazing because Sudama felt very awkward in the embrace of the Lord. After traveling so long, you imagine, Sudama traveled and traveled such a long time. He was not really presentable. Bhagavatam tells us, that he was so bony that actually he had only skin and one could easily see his sunken cheeks and his bony body. So there was nothing fleshy for Krishna to hold him. If you hold someone round, it's quite nice. But if you hold someone bony, it's not very nice. But even then, Krishna is so kind. Krishna embraced him, didn't care whether he was dressed well, whether he had perfume on him, nothing like that. Krishna embraced him. And Bhagavatam tells us Krishna embraced him with two arms, both his arms, and embraced him very tightly. And at that point of time, immediately he seated Sudama on the same bedstead where he was seated. He did not put him on a separate chair. How personal Krishna was. The same place where he sat, he put him there. That is a very important point about how Krishna, it signifies how exalted is a devotee in the estimation of the Lord. A devotee who is pure like Sudama in the estimation of the Lord is as good as the Lord himself. And this is a very important point for us. So he put him on the bedstead, and then he himself personally brought him fruits. He brought him drinks, and he brought nice cool water to offer to him personally. Then he bowed down before the Brahmana Sudama. He put his feet, in a tray, and he washed his feet because they would have been aching after such a long walk. He sprinkled that water from the feet that he took, that charanamrit that we take, and he actually sprinkled it on his head. The Supreme Personality of Godhead took the water offered to the Brahmana and devotee Sudama and sprinkled it on his head. Because the Lord wanted to show us how important a devotee is. And in that way, the Lord is the perfect example. Then he burned some incense, and then he offered a nice arati to the Brahmana. That is how worshipable the Vaishnava and the Brahmana is to the Lord. And then he fed him very sumptuously, so sumptuously. And all that time, Rukmini Mata was just watching. And when she saw how loving, Krishna was to this gentleman, she took up the chamara and she herself started fanning Sudama, just like we would fan the Lord in the aratis. And then the other ladies and the queens in the palaces, they stopped. If you see the virtual background, which is very nice of Anand Prabhu, you will see the scene actually. You will see Rukmini Mata first assisting Krishna. And look at Krishna, he's the king of Dwarka. But look at how subservient and humble he is. And look at Sudama, looking very simple and befuddled actually. What is this? What is happening here? And then look behind, you see the two ladies standing there. So Krishna book, Prabhupada refers, there were other ladies who came and watched. They watched because they thought they were the queens also. Bhagavatam tells us they were astonished how eagerly Krishna was serving Sudama. And they were astonished because Prabhupada says that actually, as far as they understood, Krishna only embraced two persons. He only embraced Rukmini and he embraced Balaram. He embraced no one else. And now they are thinking, who is this third person? Who is this personality? Krishna is so stingy in his embrace, so to speak, because he reserves it for Balaram and Rukmini. But he's able to give it to this Brahmana who's not very, presentable. So they watched and they were so amazed. And at that point of time, very nicely, Krishna sat down. And now he decided, let us talk, my dear friend. It is such a great fortune that we are now meeting each other actually. And this is how Sudama was received by Krishna. So we can understand from this point in this part of the pastime of Krishna, how Krishna is so kind to receive his devotees. Do you also realize another thing? Krishna is never impersonal in his dealings with devotees. And therefore, Prabhus and Matajis, it becomes so important for us to never be impersonal in our dealings with devotees. We should receive devotees in the same way that we receive Krishna. Because in our hearts, these devotees whom we all have the fortune of meeting, they make us remember Krishna. Just by seeing all of you, we are remembering Krishna. By seeing the tilak, by knowing how we have interacted as devotees, immediately who comes to mind? It's Krishna who comes to mind. So this is the way Krishna is showing us how we should receive the devotees. And look at the mood of Sudama. Sudama did not travel, from Porbandar, where he was, to Dwarka. He did not travel from Porbandar to Dwarka, which is quite far if you're walking. He did not travel in the mood of asking something material from Krishna. Even though the premise was to go and ask Krishna for something, his mood was absorption in the remembrance of the Lord. And that is why the Lord received him and reciprocated with him, because his devotion was ananyas chintayanto mam. In his heart and his consciousness, his chinta is chintayantaha. Chintayantaha means in 922 concentrating. All the way from Porbandar to Dwarka, the only activity that Sudama was doing was to concentrate his mind in Krishna. You know, concentrate is very interesting as a word. You have seen this like orange juice. You go to the supermarkets, you can either buy diluted orange juice or you can buy concentrate. Concentrate means if you pour a little bit, it is already strong because there's no dilution. If you try drinking an entire glass of concentrated orange juice, I think you'll get instantly diabetes. But if you drink diluted orange juice, you'll survive. So our devotional service should not be diluted. Our devotional service should be saturated and concentrated. If it's concentrated, chintayato, chintayantaha. In other words, if we are really concentrating on Krishna, then there is no question of asking Krishna for anything because we're just relishing Krishna's pastimes. That is the mood in which Sudama came. And that's why it's very important for us to keep this in mind, because this is how we progress in devotional service. So at this point of time, the Lord started talking to Sudama. You may be thinking, what would Krishna speak with Sudama after so many years? Their only point of contact was when they were both students in the ashram of Sandipani Muni. But very interestingly, immediately after Krishna starts speaking to Sudama, the first main important topic he talks to him is actually about the spiritual master. Krishna immediately goes into the topic of, my dear Sudama, the spiritual master initiates us into transcendental knowledge, and therefore he is to be worshipped as much as I am. Then he went on to say, one may have more than one spiritual master. Anyone who instructs us, he becomes Siksha Guru. And then Krishna told Sudama, but we can be initiated only once, by Diksha Guru. So we can take instructions from everyone. Anyone who teaches us something in Krishna consciousness, they become our Siksha Gurus. That was the point that Krishna was telling Sudama. In other words, we can learn from everyone about Krishna. And that was how all the great devotees were. Wherever they went, they only saw the hand of Krishna. They learned about Krishna through situations, through events, and through devotees. In fact, Parikshit Maharaj learned how to renounce this world after he put the garland of date snake on Shamika Rishi. So in that way, he was accepting of his situation. And that is how transcendental knowledge is actually received. We always think that the spiritual master is the initiating spiritual master. That is Diksha. But Krishna is telling us that we have to learn from anyone who gives us Krishna consciousness. And Krishna so nicely tells Sudama there that both the Diksha and Siksha are actually my representatives. And he says, a human being who takes advantage of these gurus, he receives proper knowledge. And with this proper knowledge, he is understood to be using the human form of life in a proper manner. Then after that, he spoke about all the different ways in which society should be functioning. Krishna then turned to Sudama and said, my dear Sudama, society functions very well when wherever we are situated in, sthane, wherever we are situated in, from that position, we actually concentrate and perform devotional service to Krishna. And this is very nice guidance Srila Prabhupada says in Krishna book, that it doesn't matter in what ashram we're in, it doesn't matter in what varna we belong to. The most important thing is, are we utilizing our human form of life to remember Krishna? And then after speaking about these two topics, then Krishna went into something even more personal. He said, my dear friend, do you remember how we went to collect wood when we were at Sandipani Muni's ashram? You remember that? Do you remember that his wife had asked us to collect wood for the fire sacrifice? And that day we went to the forest. We entered a dense forest at that time, but suddenly we got lost. Krishna and Sudama got lost. And when we got lost, there was heavy rainfall. There was a dust cloud. Everything was very dark. We couldn't see where we were going. We were greatly pained by the torrents of rain and the dust. And we tried to find a way out. But whichever direction we turned, we were bewildered. And in that distressed condition, what did we do? We held each other's hands. Krishna's remembering. Krishna's remembering, I held on to your hand, my dear friend, because I was in a bewildered situation. And you held my hand. And we held each other's hands in that situation. And we tried to find a way out. And when we couldn't find a way out, we just passed the night under a tree. And early in the morning, our Guru Maharaj sent his disciples to come looking for us. And when they finally located us, Sandipani Muni, our Guru, came. And when he saw our condition while we were trying to execute an order of his to actually get wood for him, he became very compassionate. Krishna is remembering all this. He's saying, Sandipani Muni, Sudama, do you remember what he told us? He said, my dear boys, it is very wonderful that you suffered so much trouble just to follow my orders. This is the perfection of our spiritual existence. When we are prepared to sacrifice, and in that process, we are prepared to suffer as long as we are following the orders of our spiritual master. Then Sandipani Muni told Krishna, and Krishna is remembering, everyone likes to take care of their body as the first consideration. But you both are so good and faithful to your Guru that you did not care for your bodily comforts. No, you could have taken so much trouble to come out of that forest and say, forget about the wood. But no, for the satisfaction of your spiritual master, you endured that terrible night. That is the way of a bona fide disciple to become free from his debt to his Guru. What a nice line Prabhupada gives in Krishna book. We are all indebted to our spiritual masters, whether Diksha or Siksha. That debt we can never repay. But the only way we can repay that debt Prabhupada gives us here is that somehow or another, if we follow his instructions, if we try to please him, if we sacrifice our bodily considerations for the higher goal of pleasing him, then that debt he considers dismissed. So Prabhupada writes in Krishna book, it is the duty of a disciple to dedicate his life to the service of the spiritual master. And then Sandipani Muni said, I bless you both. I bless you, Krishna, and I bless you, Sudama. What was his blessing? More wealth, more money, more property? No. He said, I bless you that all your desires and ambitions be fulfilled. Now, that sounds like a material blessing. But now he goes on to explain. By that, he says, may the understanding of the Vedas always be captured in your memory and in your heart. May you never forget what you have learned. And may you remember the teachings of the Vedas and quote their instructions without difficulty. And may you never be disappointed in this life and any other life. Otherwise, in this material world, what is the one companion that follows us all the time? Disappointment. Why? Expectation. If you expected the speaker today to speak in a certain way, you become disappointed. If you expected someone to sing kirtan in a certain way, you will become disappointed. If you expected that today I must have a certain kind of food, you don't get it, you become disappointed. But the prayer, the benediction that Sandipani Muni gave Krishna and Sudama is so nice. You will never be disappointed in any life. Why? Because that is what the spiritual master desires for every disciple. That the disciple always be happy in spiritual life. And so now Krishna spoke about that wonderful incident. And then he turned to Sudama and said, Sudama, do you remember like this, so many incidences happened to you and me in the ashram? And from all this, I realized today, Krishna is saying this, I realized today, my dear friend Sudama, that I'm in this situation and you are also situated very happily because of the blessings of our spiritual master. It is his blessings and by his mercy that today you and I are peaceful. It is by his blessings that we are prosperous. If Krishna can say this so much gratitude to his spiritual master, then how much must we become grateful to all the devotees and all the spiritual masters who have brought us to this position. That's why when we take up devotional service, the real benediction that Krishna gives us that we don't have, that we lack, is that somehow or another he gives us the association of advanced devotees who can guide us in Krishna consciousness. So whenever we read, to them I carry what they lack. What we really lack in this world is guidance to go back to Krishna. And by speaking about his remembrance of his time with his spiritual master, Krishna is implicitly telling us how much gratitude we must give to him and to all the spiritual masters. It is their transcendental knowledge that we lack. But by devotional service, Krishna transmits that transcendental knowledge that we lack to us in our hearts. This is such an important point. And then after he said that, then what did Sudama say? Sudama then said something really nice. Sudama said, my dear Lord, you are actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're not an ordinary person. And you are actually the spiritual master of everyone. You are the Supreme Spiritual Master. After I left the ashram and you went to Dwarka and I went back, I recall how fortunate I was to live with you and be under the shelter of your soothing relationship and to be under the shelter of Sandipani Muni. After I went back to the ashram, my dear friend Krishna, I decided that I have nothing to do now with prescribed Vedic duties. I decided that I have nothing to do now with rituals, ceremonies. I've decided that there is no necessity for me to perform anything like economic development, sense gratification. None of this is important. Even liberation is not important to me. Why? Because as long as I am remembering you, all of these things, if you wish, they will come to me. If I like them and you think you will give it to me, I will receive. And if you think that they should not be belonging to me, then you will take away. So I now know, my dear Krishna, that actually all these things are derived from one person, and that is you. And this is such a nice mood. This is the meaning of Ananyas Chintayantu Mam. This is the meaning of Tesham Nitya Abhiyuktanam. That we are engaging always, that we are properly worshiping Krishna, and we are not engaging in anything else. Sometimes, before we come to Krishna consciousness, we are so caught up with rituals and ceremonies, and we think that that is what defines spiritual life. But the definition of spiritual life is 10% tasmat ekena manasa. The definition of spiritual life is to be tivrena bhakti yogena, to be only concentrating on Krishna. That is why in the second canto, 4th chapter, 3rd and 4th verse, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes Madhavendra Puri very nicely. Madhavendra Puri's verse, that his prayer is exactly the realization of Sudama here. Sandhya vandanam bhadramastu bhavato Bosnana tubhyam namo Bo deva pitarascha tarpana vidho Naham shama shamyatam Yatra kwapi nishadya yadavakulo Tamasya kamsadvishaha Smaram smaramagam harami tadalam Manye kim anye name. So this is a beautiful verse. Madhavendra Puri says, and Prabhupada quotes it there, O my evening prayer, all good unto you. O my morning bath, I bid you goodbye. O Devatas and forefathers, please excuse me. I am unable now to perform any more offerings for your pleasure. Now, I have decided to free myself from all reactions to sin, simply by remembering anywhere and everywhere the great descendant of the Yadu dynasty and the great enemy of Kamsa, known as Lord Krishna. I think that is sufficient for me. What is the use of further endeavor? This is a very important verse and such a nice one. And that was actually Sudama's point. And so at that point of time, Sudama, was just seated and having wonderful discussions with Krishna. Now at that point of time, Krishna knew Sudama was hesitating to present to him that chip rice that he brought, if you remember. He had eaten food fit for a king. But then after Sudama had eaten that, he was just thinking to himself, how am I going to give the Lord my gift? The Lord washed my feet. He gave me sandalwood. He did arati for me. What do I have? Cheap rice. And that too, after so many days, I don't think the rice is in good condition. Krishna is in the heart of everyone, right? So he knew, he understood Sudama's heart. And he understood his mind. So he turned to Sudama and said, my dear friend, I know I'm not in need of anything. I know that because you'll tell me that. But please know one thing. If my devotee gives me something as an offering of love, even though it may appear insignificant, I accept it, Sudama, with great pleasure. On the other hand, if a person who is not a devotee, even though he can give me many, many valuable things, the truth is, I do not like to accept them. I only accept things offered to me in devotion and love. Otherwise, no matter how valuable something may be, my dear Sudama, I will not accept it. My pure devotee offers me very simple things. They offer me a leaf, they offer me a flower, they offer me little water. But now Prabhupada uses this word. But that devotee saturates the offering in devotional service. That is one word we should take back with us today, Prabhus and Matajis. Whatever activity we do for Krishna, make it concentrated. Remember the word concentrated? Chintayantaha. Make it concentrated. In other words, as Prabhupada says in Krishna book, saturate our offering with devotions. Then what Krishna said? Krishna said, I gladly accept such an offering, Sudama, and I eat it with great pleasure. Again, Krishna assured Sudama, so don't worry, give me what you have. But Sudama was hesitating. And then so finally Krishna decided, never mind, stop asking and being polite about it. He just snatched from Sudama that bundle that he saw. He knew, Krishna knew that is the bundle because there's nothing else on him anyway. He only had a bundle. So he picked up the bundle of the cheap rice, which was hanging on the shoulder of his dear friend. And after picking it, he said, what is this? My dear friend, you brought a gift, but you never told me you brought it. You know? So then he said, what is this? He opened it and he said, this is nice, palatable cheap rice. This is my favorite. Not only is it going to satisfy me, but Prabhupada writes, it will satisfy the whole creation. And that's why Prabhupada says at that point of time that this is one lesson we must take from the statement of Krishna. If we live our life in such a way that our goal is always to do something that will please the Lord and therefore please his devotees, then whatever capacity we have will always be accepted by Krishna. Even if our capacity is very little, he will accept it because we are doing it for his satisfaction. My Guru Maharaj said a very nice formula. When you do something for the satisfaction of the Lord, that attempt to do something for the satisfaction of the Lord automatically becomes saturated with devotional service. Satisfaction of the Lord equals to saturation of devotional service. It's such a nice formula. That is how we must live. That is how we must manage our life. And while speaking that way, he decided, stop speaking, now I should taste it. He took one morsel of the chipped rice from his bundle and he put it into his mouth. And the moment he put it into his mouth, Krishna smiled. He was so happy. Then he took a second one because it tastes very good. So what did he do? He was about to put the second one inside when Rukmini Mata came from nowhere and told the Lord. She caught hold of his hand and she said, my dear Lord, enough. If you take one morsel of chipped rice, it is sufficient to give him opulence in this life and to continue opulence in next life. If you give him the second chipped rice, my dear Lord, then I, as the goddess of fortune, must personally go with Sudama now, and I must take care of all his needs also. And I don't want to leave you, so let me stay. Let me stay. And that is the greatness of Krishna. Bhagavatam and Prabhupada writes there that when one offers food with love, again saturated with love, if you offer food with love to Krishna, he's so pleased that he accepts it from the devotee. And when he accepts it, Prabhupada says, Rukmini Devi, the goddess of fortune, becomes so greatly obliged to that devotee that she has to go personally to his house or her house to turn it into the most opulent home of the world. That is why Rukmini Mata said, one is enough. And that's why Prabhupada says, all we have to do is every day, you just prepare nice prasadam for the Lord and you feed Narayana sumptuously. And if you feed him sumptuously, he will always preserve what you lack. No, he will preserve what you have. And whatever you are lacking, Rukmini Devi is always there to give you what you lack. This is the greatness of Krishna's mercy. And all of this came from chip rice, a few days old, that did not even belong to Sudama, that was begged from the neighbor. And even then Krishna accepted it. Why? Because his love for Krishna was saturated. Saturated with what? Devotional service. And in that way, Krishna ate his morsel of rice, became very happy. They talked a bit more, and then Krishna brought Sudama into the bedchambers, laid him down. And when Sudama lay down, Bhagavatam tells us, the bed was so soft, Dwarka was so beautiful, the palace was so opulent, that for a while Sudama thought, I must have died and gone back to some heavenly kingdom, or this must definitely be Vaikuntha, because there cannot be anything so opulent that I've ever seen. And Prabhupada writes so nicely, actually, he was living in Vaikuntha. Kunta means anxiety. Vai means no. So any position in life that we are in, if our consciousness is actually always to satisfy Krishna, Krishna will preserve that consciousness and never allow it to go. And Krishna will give us what we lack. If we are humble to Krishna, like Sudama was, if we felt very unqualified and approached Krishna with saturated devotional service, then whatever consciousness that we have that might be disturbed, Krishna transforms that consciousness into Vaikuntha consciousness. The journey of Sudama Vipra was not only a physical journey from his house to Dwarka, it was a spiritual journey of remembrance of the Lord. And the entire journey, it was saturated with feelings of favorable, uninterrupted, and unmotivated devotional service. And so the next day in the morning, Sudama packed up, nothing much to pack, just one bag. That bag is gone, so nothing actually. He left. Krishna book tells us he appeared to leave with actually nothing substantial from Krishna. Prabhupada is kind, he's using the word nothing substantial, but actually there was nothing at all. He did not appear to have anything. But as Sudama bade farewell to Krishna, he did not even ask Krishna for anything. He didn't. Why? Because even though Sudama was leaving Krishna, he was actually carrying Krishna in his heart. And this is an important principle, that if we have Krishna, actually we lack nothing. If we have bhakti, we lack nothing. If we have our chanting beads and the ability to chant Krishna's names, we lack nothing. If we have sadhu sangha, we lack nothing. If we have deities that we can do arati for, we lack nothing. If we have Srimad Bhagavatam that we can study, we lack nothing. And that is why Sudama had everything and he lacked nothing. And that's why he went away. And as he went away, he was just thinking to his heart. And this is the part of the pastime which is winding down, but which is very important for us to take back. Because it reveals how we react to Krishna. Sometimes, when we come to Krishna, we have so many desires in our heart. And of course, Shukadeva Goswami, in 2.3.10 of Srimad Bhagavatam, says a very important verse, Akamaha sarva kamova, moksha kama udari vidi, tivrena bhakti yogena. So it is very clear in that verse that Shukadeva Goswami says, even if you have something, even if you have some desire, if you have no desire, or you have desire for liberation, in all situations, tivrena bhakti yogena, you just turn to Krishna. But sometimes what happens is we keep turning to Krishna for material motives. And sometimes when we go and see Krishna, and imagine a position like Sudama had nothing. So he went to Krishna because actually he was supposed to ask Krishna, can you give me some money? Because there's nothing at home. But when Krishna did not even give anything to him, I were in his shoes, I would give Krishna for the whole day. He didn't say anything. In the night, after he put me to sleep, he didn't say anything. In the in the morning, at least before I leave, I would say, Krishna, if you don't mind, apart from seeing you, this is just one slight problem I have. I have no money. Can you help me? I would probably say that. But Sudama didn't do that. He didn't do that. Why? Now let's understand it from Prabhupada's Krishna book. Sudama thought to himself, it is most pleasurable to see Krishna. He's so devoted to the Brahmanas. He's so devoted to the devotees. I am nothing, but he respected me so much even though I was just a poor Brahmana. He embraced me to his chest. He never embraces anyone except the goddess of fortune and Balaram. How can there be any comparison between me, a poor and sinful Brahmana, and the Supreme Lord Krishna, the husband of the goddess of fortune? And yet, considering me as his old friend, he embraced me with his two transcendental arms. He was so kind to me, he made me sit on the same bedstead where the goddess of fortune lies down. He considered me his real brother. How can I appreciate my obligation to him? When I was feeling tired, Srimati Rukmini Devi just stood up and she began to fan me. She held the chamara in her own hand, not the hand of a maidservant. She never considered her exalted position as the first queen, chief queen of Lord Krishna. I was rendered service by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I was rendered service by him because he has such high regard for devotees and brahmanas. And yet I'm not qualified. He massaged my legs. He actually fed me with his own hands, and he practically worshipped me. And even though I came to ask him for something, and he knows my heart, yet he is so kind, he did not even give me a single penny. Prabhupada uses the old word farthing from the colonial era. That was the currency then, a farthing. A single farthing means not even a single cent. Prabhupada says, Sudama, as he was leaving, he said, Krishna is so kind that he did not give me a single cent. The materialists will think that's not being kind, man. That's being cruel. I need money. He didn't give me a single cent. But Sudama said he was very kind. Why? He knows that I am poverty stricken. And he knows if I got a little bit of money from him, I will become puffed up. I'll become mad after material opulence. And I will forget Krishna. This is the key. This is the mood of Ananyas Chintayantu Mam. In other words, not only do we remember Krishna, but the episode of Sudama and Krishna tells us how should we remember Krishna. We should remember Krishna always in the mood of gratitude. That is what all that Sudama was expressing now, that I shared with you from Krishna book, is all expression of gratitude. And gratitude can only come on the platform of genuine humility. Without humility, one cannot become grateful. Then that gratitude is artificial. Sudama was genuinely humble about his constitutional position. He did not consider himself a great Brahmana who was not attached to material things. Sometimes in this world, as devotees, we give up so many material attachments and we say, Prabhu, I'm very simple, Prabhu, I don't have anything, I don't have this, I don't have that. Oh, you drive a big car, I have nothing. But we don't realize we have become attached to poverty. We've become proud of our simplicity. It has caught us. It is as bad as being proud of our complexities. If we wake up every morning for Mangala Arati and after a while we forget the purpose of Mangala Arati, we will say, I'm always waking up for Mangala Arati. My penance is very good. We've just become puffed up because we've become attached to our penance. But we have not become attached to the mood of rendering service to Krishna. So Sudama could easily have been puffed up being a very simple Brahmana. But he said, Krishna is very kind not to give me anything because he knows if I get something, I'll become very kind. And Prabhupada says this statement of Sudama is very correct. Krishna sometimes knows, he knows that somehow or another when we receive something, Prabhupada says, it is very easy for us to forget Krishna. And therefore, Krishna never will place a devotee in a position where he has material opulence but he has forgotten Krishna. And if Krishna feels that a devotee wants material opulence, the Lord sometimes creates such obstacles and prevents him from actually obtaining it. Krishna himself intervenes. Just like here, Krishna smiled, he talked to him, but he refused to give him anything because he wanted to test the heart of Sudama. And we know now the heart of Sudama. So then he began to think. Sudama began to think. As it is, from the time I was born, I was poverty stricken. Isn't it? As it is, I was poverty stricken. So why should I get opulence now? And as it is, when I was born with nothing. So even if I get something now, it will leave me at the point of death. It doesn't matter. And then just before he reached his house in Porbandar, if you can call it a house because it was just a shack, he began praying to Krishna. My dear Krishna, all these acts are acts of my dear friend you. You are my beautiful dark friend. You're so liberal. You're so liberal. That you're so kind to me that you have actually stopped me from getting more than I deserve. So I accept what I have deserved, my Lord, and I thank you for protecting my consciousness, for preserving my consciousness. That is the prayer of a devotee, to preserve our consciousness. And now Sudama arrived at the lane where his shack was. And to his surprise, he did not see his hut. He thought maybe I took the wrong turn because he saw a palace. He saw maid servants in the palace. He saw a lady running to him looking like the goddess of fortune, and she fell at his feet and said, my dear husband, what have you done? Whatever you have done is amazing. You must have petitioned Krishna so well that look at what he has given. And then he realized, oh my God, this is not the goddess of fortune. This is my wife, whom I just saw 1 month ago, and she was in taunts and tatters. And then he saw his children. They were decked like princes. And he saw all the other personalities, maid servants who were all there. And he was wondering to himself, where did we get all this? He looked at the lamps. Bhagavatam tells us that his entire palace was laid out in clear, polished marble. The pillars were with emerald and stones, polished and precious stones. And even the lamps that they were carrying were actually laced with precious stones. That's what I remember reading. Can you imagine? And Sudama thought, this is amazing. Now, what is Sudama's reaction to this? Now he says, it is my dear, beautiful, dark friend Krishna who has done this. He did not want to speak to me and tell me what he was going to give because he was afraid I will forget my position. And at the same time, without disturbing me, like a rain cloud that comes in the middle of the night, and pours rain on the land where someone is trying to grow crops. My dear Krishna came and fulfilled a desire I did not even want to put forward to him, but he fulfilled it anyway. And he came in the middle of the night when I was not here, and he received what I gave with a little bit of love, and I gave so little, but he received it so well, and he reciprocated it in such a way that it is far, far, far beyond what I have to do. And Prabhupada writes a very nice line, and we should conclude with that line. Prabhupada says, one does not become a loser by giving to the Lord. One does not become a loser by giving to the Lord. One becomes a gainer by millions of times. By millions of times. And so Sudama decided to accept everything that Krishna had given. He concluded that whatever opulences he had received should not be used for his extravagant sense gratification, but for the service of the Lord. So he accepted his opulence, Krishna book says, but in the spirit of renunciation. He remained unattached to sense gratification. He lived very peacefully with his wife. He enjoyed the facilities of opulence as the prasadam of the Lord. He brought little bit of prasadam for Krishna, but now he received all the prasadam of Krishna with love. Whatever nice food stuff he had, he offered it saturated with love to Krishna. Whatever wealth he had, he used it in the service of Krishna. And in this way, Krishna book tells us, day by day as he grew old, this great Brahmana Sudama increased his love and remembrance of Krishna, such that whatever material contamination that even could have been in his heart were completely erased. And at the time of his passing, he actually attained liberation from his material cycle of birth and death. And he attained the spiritual sky where he continued his service to the Lord. And thus ends this beautiful pastime of Sudama. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for your time, Anand Prabhu and Viraj Prabhu. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or points? I think Achyuta Prabhu had written something. Should I look at them for 1 or 2 minutes, Prabhus?
Yes.
Viraj Prabhu? Anand Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Achyuta Prabhu, let me see what you said here. Sudama never over-endeavored. He traveled to Dwarka without speculating on his reward. We have heard many times that we should not be result-oriented and motivated for the result. However, in school life, we find this very hard to follow. What advice do you have for students to not to worry on the results and instead focus on pleasing Krishna? What a nice point. And this is not only for students, I think it's for all of us, but specifically for students. Don't use bhagavatam in such a way to say that Krishna, actually I want to chant rounds and I want to be devotee. I will not over endeavor in my studies. And then you tell your parents when the results come back and they're very bad, you say, well, I remember Sudama very much. And I thought, what's the difference, I should just endeavor, not over endeavor, but I should just endeavor. Actually, a devotee is immaculate in the discharge of his duties. He doesn't over endeavor, meaning he doesn't do a particular function that he's prescribed to do for his satisfaction, but he does it for Krishna. When Arjuna fought on the battlefield, he fought to the best of his ability. He left no stone unturned. And that's how we should be as students. When you are a student, remember who are you actually working for. The person you want to satisfy is Krishna. So how much well and how much perfectly you must try to perform your duty. So be the best student you can be. Be the best worker you can be. Guru Maharaj used to tell us, Vaishnavas are not shirkers. We are workers. We don't run away from our duties, but we perform them in such an expert way that we don't waste time on them. If you're a very diligent student, you will study in such a consistent manner that you won't study for hours and hours 2 days before exam and then just die. Right? You're laughing, I know, because that's what happens to most of us. Instead, we should be so consistent that when you're consistent with performing your duty and performing it for Krishna, you find Krishna gives you what you lack. What is it you lack? What is it I lack? The intelligence to perform it in such a way that you can perform it with proper consciousness. That is what Krishna will give us. So he won't take away your results. He won't take away your efforts, but he will give you intelligence so that you can perform your duty, but at the same time, you will always have time for Krishna. Always have time for Krishna. I remember when I took up Krishna consciousness, I was in secondary school. So it was 1983, 84. And then I remember meeting Guru Maharaj. And then I remember in all those years, I used to chant. I was chanting so much. But my parents never felt any worry about my chanting. The reason they didn't feel any worry was I was doing well in school. And I remember my Guru Maharaj telling me that if you do very well in school, you offer it to Krishna, Krishna will make sure that you always have time for him. So you must combine determination and desire to serve Krishna by doing the best you can and always remain at the lotus feet of the Lord in surrender. This is a very important point. I hope it's useful, Achyuta Prabhu. Thank you. Is there anything else here? One more. If saturation of bhakti is lacking, will Krishna give it as per Ananya Chintayantu Mam? Yes, Raghuveer Prabhu. It is a journey. Bhakti is a journey. The most important thing is that we are endeavoring for Krishna. Krishna is Bhavagrahi Janardana. He sees the essence of a devotee's mentality. He's not so interested in the result. Result is always not in our hands. Result is in Krishna's hands. But if we persevere and we are determined and we are dedicated and we are concentrated, then Krishna will actually help us to increase our concentration on him. He will find the ways and means. How does he do it? He will take away our material desires. Sometimes we desire for something. I want this promotion. I want this promotion. Pray very hard to Krishna. We give advance arguments. By this promotion, I'll become more Krishna conscious. I'll get more money. I'll give you something. But Krishna knows, no, you won't do all this. I know that. You won't. So what does he do? He denies it. In 5th canto, I'm remembering a verse. 5th canto, 19th chapter, 27th verse. That's your answer. And that relates to the verse here. 5:19:27. Satyam disati artitam artito nrinam naivartado yat punar artita yataha swayam vidate bhajatam anichchatam ichchapidanam nijapada pallavam. So if I remember the translation correctly, it is nicely stated that Krishna fulfills the material desires of a devotee who approaches him with such motive. So actually Krishna, as a rule, if you have a material desire in the beginning, you'll find Krishna will help you sometimes. But Bhagavatam tells us he does not bestow benediction upon a devotee that will result in that devotee demanding for more material benediction. So in other words, one strike. You ask Krishna one time, he may give it. Second time you ask and say, no, Krishna, I need this. Today I just want this toy. This is the last toy I want. Won't ask anymore. 2 months later, new toy comes. This is the only last one. How many times we did that with our parents, isn't it? In that way, we really, cheated our parents. And parents said, all right. But Krishna is a loving parent. But he's also firm. So Bhagavatam tells us, if you ask the same benediction, which is material again, or you ask a benediction and it will cause you to ask another one, what does he do? He will not give it to you. He won't. Instead, he will give you something else. He will give that devotee the shelter of his own lotus feet. Even though we don't aspire for it, he will give it to us. How many of us were somehow or another pulled into Krishna consciousness? Didn't want to go, avoided devotees. Suddenly one Rasgulla went in and we said, devotional service is very nice. So often we avoided devotional service, but some kind soul grabbed us, that is Krishna. And in that way, he satisfies our real desires. So don't worry, Raghuvir Prabhu. We have to try. And as we try, Krishna will actually provide. One last point, I think. For the concentration of Krishna, one could have one idol of Krishna, we call him Murti, instead of many knowingly that all of them is one. For the concentration upon Krishna, should one have only one Murti of Krishna instead of having all of them, instead of many knowingly that all of them are Krishna? Please advise. Okay, I see your point. I think it is very simple. We should have a form of Krishna that we always concentrate on and keep it simple. Bhishmadev concentrated on the Lord in his four-handed form, and Krishna so kindly appeared before him. Murari Gupta concentrated on the Lord as Lord Ram, and so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared as Lord Ram. But Srila Prabhupada has told us that we should concentrate on that beautiful form of Krishna as he appears in Vrindavan. So having one form of Krishna is complete, Prabhu. It satisfies all other forms. The original form of Krishna, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, is more than enough. And that is how we should be. Thank you very much. I will end here. Viraj Prabhu, any realizations you'd like to share with us? I've spoken too long.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for such a wonderful class. There are so many comments in the chat screen. I think there are a few more questions, but if time permitting.
Oh, there are. Okay, I didn't see. Sorry. If you think, then I can very quickly see. I have a question about unmotivated devotional service. When we have some motivations, such as performing devotional service for attaining ultimate happiness or solving the problems of the world in our lives, These appear as good motivations. However, it is yet not unmotivated. Can you talk further on this? That's a nice question, Lakshmi Mataji. The point is, whenever we start in devotional service, we are not perfect. And very often we start in devotional service on an imperfect way. We may come to Krishna because we are distressed, we are inquisitive. So there will always be motivations. The important thing is that we should understand the goal of our life. If the goal of life is to satisfy Krishna, then let that become the primary motivation. There will be other motivations, like Sudama's wife had presented to Sudama a motivation. Sudama handled the motivation very expertly. He utilized that motivation to enhance his remembrance of Krishna and create an opportunity to remember Krishna. So we should learn from Sudama. Sudama was presented with what appeared to be a good motivation, as is your question, but he did not deny it in a fanatical manner. He actually embraced it because he realized it was needed, but he had full faith in Krishna. And therefore he presented his personal motivation, which is uninterrupted, unmotivated devotional service of simply remembering and seeing Krishna. That was sufficient for him. And because he presented in his heart and he desired to be unmotivated, he had firm faith that unmotivated devotional service is premised on your firm faith that Krishna knows your heart. This is very important. Very often we ask for something, Bhagavatam says, whether it's good motivation or bad motivation, we ask for something because we think Krishna doesn't know our heart. But he does. In the 4th canto, 20th chapter, 31st verse, this explains very nicely your question. Tvanmayayadha jana isha kandito yad anyadashashtaritat mano abuddha yatachare balahitam pita swayam tatha tvamevam arhasina samihitum. You can look it up when you can, but the translation is very nice. Prithu Maharaj is praying to Krishna. He's saying, my dear Lord, because of your illusory energy, we are all in this world and we have forgotten our real position. And out of ignorance, what have we done? We are desiring for material happiness and in the form of friendship, love, and society. And somehow or another, all our motivations are moving that way. Now he says something. Please do not ask me to take some material benefit from you. What a nice point. Please do not ask me. In other words, he's praying to Krishna. Krishna, please somehow give me the strength not to ask you for some material benefit. Why? Because you are a father. And as a father who doesn't wait for the demands of the son, he does everything for the benefit of the son. Because he knows the mind and the heart of the son. You please bestow upon me whatever you think is best. Arhasi na samihitum. Please act on my behalf. This should be the mood. If we absorb this prayer, Mataji, if we absorb this prayer, then this prayer will automatically, without separate endeavor, take away whatever motivations we may have. It will give us the strength of what we lack. This prayer will give us that strength to just be focused on Krishna. Another verse useful for you from Bhagavatam to study is 6:1646 of Srimad Bhagavatam. In there also Chitraketu Maharaj says very nicely, Viditam Ananta Samastam Thava Jagat Atmano Janai Iha Charitam Vignyapam Parama Guruho Kiyat Iva Savitur Iva Kadyo Athai. This is very nice point. He says, O unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead, whatever a living entity does in this material world is actually well known to you. Whatever we are doing is actually well known to Krishna. Why? Because he's super soul. Now he says something nice. In the presence of a sun, what is there to be revealed by the light of a glowworm? You know the glowworms? Very small in the caves. When you see a glowworm in the cave, it looks very bright. Put it under the sun, you can't even see it. What's the value of the light? So he's saying, in your presence, you know everything, Krishna. In your presence, there is nothing for me to make known to you. Nothing for me to make known to you. So, 4:30:31, 6:16:46. If we study these two, they will give us a very nice understanding of how Sudama could actually approach Krishna, because he approached him in this mood actually. It's very nice. Is there anything else? I have one question. Krishna listens to those who follow 6 principles of surrender. And if we found that even after so much desire to surrender, we fail every time, then what is Krishna's response in such case? No matter how many times we fail, Krishna never gives up on us. We give up on Krishna very quickly, but he never gives up to us, never gives up on us. The principles of surrender are there to guide us. But ultimately, one must have faith that this process of devotional service will attract Krishna. It will attract him. The more sincere we are, the more automatically surrendered we become. Don't make the process of surrender mechanical. 6 items. If I tick number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. No. It should be in the way we live. We should live in such a way, plan our lives, that we become saturated in Krishna consciousness. Krishna is our protector. I need to turn to no one but Krishna. I will only accept that which is favorable to Krishna. Why should I accept that which is not favorable to Krishna? If $1 million is coming and Krishna decides not to give it to me, it's unfavorable. I don't accept it. If Krishna gives me something and he gives me a palace, I use it for Krishna. It is favorable. So you see, automatically, Krishna consciousness is so practical. When we follow the process, the 6 items come very automatically. Very, very automatically. Don't worry. And last thing from Rasika Govind Prabhu. You are remembering shlokas from the tip. Oh, you're remembering shloka numbers. But we find very difficulty to remember reference. Prabhu, don't worry about the reference. You know why? Krishna is not interested in numbers. After all my quoting, if I cannot practice this, then there's no point. But you are practicing it. I have no doubt about it. So if Krishna wants us to remember, he will remember. We will remember. But more important than remembrance of the shloka is the capability to practice it. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Vaman Kshetra ki. Ananta Kori Vaishnavinda ki. Nitai Gaura Prabhu. Wish you all the best. Thank you, Anand Prabhu. Thank you, Viraj Prabhu. Thank you to all the devotees from all over the world. Be fired up and remember this wonderful story of Sudama. And remember, there is nothing to be morose about. Nothing. We do not lack anything in Krishna consciousness. It is our right to be happy in this process. Nobody should be morose. I'm seeing all of your faces. Yes. Everyone should smile. Yeah, Umesh Prabhu, you're smiling nicely. I can see you there. We should just smile. At the end of all the talk, I remember my Guru Maharaj always telling me, be happy in your devotional service. If whole day you're morose about devotional service, you might as well go back to material life and try to get some 6:30 happiness there. You forgot why you came here. You came here to be happy. So be happy. The journey in devotional service is as sweet as the destination. Hare Krishna.